So out of all the backstories done thus far in Terra Formars, I definitely got to say that I felt Adolf's was the best done. I think the presentation, the way it was told in a very slow pace, because I felt as though the backstory this week, with finding out about his past and everything that happened with him, they slowed down the pace a little bit because everything has been really fast for Terra Formars. Everything is just, explosions, ass-kicking, monsters, death, all sorts of shit. So with this week's episode, with them slowing it down a bit so we can understand exactly what happened to him prior to coming to Mars and why he is the way he is, it definitely made things a little bit more be put into perspective and kind of just understanding the character and the way they did it. It just felt a lot more mature. Like there were some other, sad backstories, whatever we've seen thus far in Terra Formars. A lot of these people, the reason they're in this predicament is because they've had fucked up lives. But Adolf, for some reason, out of all of them, I felt is not only my favorite, but I think the way it was done in the anime has just been presented the best. Not to mention we're seeing all of this while Adolf is facing down 300 cockroaches. Let's go. So with this week's episode, we find out a little bit more about Adolf and his abilities, also his backstory and everything. And for starters, I don't know why while I was watching this and I saw him facing down all these roaches. I mean, he's like, okay, I'll take down the 300 over there. Shows just how confident in his abilities he is and how great his abilities are. I mean, at the end of the day, if you remember last week, we just saw him sitting there with a bunch of dead roaches. Like, he took out an entire army of them. So we know that at the end of the day, Adolf is the truth. When it comes to, like, if you need the man to do the job, he's going to get it done and then some. So this episode, it showcases that 300 is light work for Adolf and he'll be able to do it. But his techniques, his electricity, finding out that he basically, like, he has the powers of an eel and things of that, I was like, I was just waiting for him to just scream out Keaton because it just came to me like that. And I was like, this shit is looking epic as fuck. But then getting a little bit more into what happened with the girl stuff, honestly, that's just fucked up. And just imagine having some domestic problems before you have to go and literally fight for your life on Mars. That would put anybody in this predicament. And it's definitely making sense as to why Adolf is very reserved and closed up, because not only the thing that happened with his wife, but even prior to that, he was basically like looked at as a monster. They looked at him because of the experiments, and it's like, it makes me wonder what exactly led to him being put in this predicament where he was the first experiment and how they just like fucked him all up. And it reminded me a little bit of like Zebra from Toriko. He had like that same thing with the jaw or whatever, except like his skin was even looking all messed up as well. So it was just like, oh my gosh, to see he had like, while everyone else, yeah, they had maybe some harsh times and some really fucked up things, he had it his whole life. Even before the stuff with his wife when he was little, they basically mutilated him for some sort of experiment and then put him out into the world, and he was just like looked at as a creature. So I don't blame him for a bit for just kind of not wanting to fuck with anyone. And at first, to be honest with you, up until this episode, I was looking at Adolf like he was just some quiet asshole, but his character makes sense. The characterization we've gotten of him thus far all adds up. I mean, looked at as a monster, went through crazy experiments as a kid, had a girlfriend, and then she ends up cheating on him and having a kid that's not even his. Yeah, everything all adds up as to why Adolf is who he is. But at the same time, I guess maybe the tragedy adds to the ferocity of him, because, I mean, 300 fucking roaches, and he's like, I'll handle that, like. And yeah, most of this episode was definitely dedicated to him. And again, while it's a gift and a curse for Terra Formars, it feels as though almost every week we're like focusing on 1 or 2 or 3 different characters and getting their backstory. I think the way they did it with this episode, it felt a lot better than the rest because they really solely focused on Adolf. And it's like, okay, Michelle is my favorite character thus far, but the way they presented Adolf, I think he could be up there as well. I think it'll be Michelle and Adolf for my 2 favorites because they just really took the time with this episode to showcase who he is and why he is ultimately an asshole. I don't blame him. With all that being said, 8 out of 10 this week. I'm glad that they slowed things down a little bit to give us a demonstration of his powers. A little bit with the narrator coming in again, although, again, I just felt as though with this week's episode, they took a lot more love and care. Maybe the animators were a big fan of Adolf or something with this episode because they were like, no, we're giving him all the spotlight this week, nobody else, and that's probably why it was such a good episode. So I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10. Very good this week. Looking forward to finding out more about Adolf if there's anything else, because it looked as though it was leaving off on like a cliffhanger. I don't know if we're going to find out anything more about his backstory, like what happened right up until he literally got on the ship, or if he's just going to massacre these fucking roaches like they're nothing. By the way, I can't wait to see But let me know your overall thoughts of the episode. Do you think that Adolf is the most interesting, the most tragic thus far of all the people on this mission? Or do you think it goes to Alex or any of the other people? And your overall thoughts of the episode. Adolf is looking like a beast, and him and Michelle right now are like my two faves of Terra Formars. But that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, if you can do so as well, that'd be awesome. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.